The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I came back to Texas and it's hot. It's like 105, 110. But what's weird is I'm not. Everybody's like, oh my god, how are you dealing with it? It's not that bad. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't find it that bad. Granted, I have air conditioning, but most people do. It's pretty much a must here. So I don't know. I don't find it terrible. I'll tell you that in Tokyo, not as hot. High 80s, 90s, but the humidity and the constant city made it feel nearly as hot, for sure. Still great. I mean, unfortunately, being in Japan, particularly the Tokyo metro area, doing that in June, not a bad idea. Doing that in July, August, terrible idea. If you're thinking of go over to Japan, avoid those 2 months, especially like late July, early August. It's a mess. I mean, it is hot. It is humid. It is a terrible time. Anyway, advice that nobody gives a shit about. So here we go. Do people learn from comics is the mail. It says, hey, Perch, you've touched on this before, but usually when you do so, you follow it up with maybe that's another video. So here I am asking, do you think people actually take away meaningful life lessons from the comics they read? There's a single Stan's soapbox cutout that circulates Twitter and Reddit on a semi-regular basis where he talks about tolerance and diversity. I noticed, though, that those supposedly avid readers of Stan's soapbox never mention the ones where he talks adamantly about defending free speech or the tolerance of your political opposites. I've also noticed that the comics have always been woke crowd don't incorporate a single thing about the crime fighting into their comics, in their politics. Wait. Don't incorporate a single thing about the crime fighting in comics into their politics. In fact, they're just as quick to label any given superhero as a fascist or mentally ill when it suits them. They don't take hard crime positions of Batman. I hear people talk about that comic that totally changed their opinion on racism, and it's like, really? You had to read an X-Men comic to understand that segregation is wrong? So for all the politically conscious storytelling in comic book history, do you think any of it actually changes people's minds in a meaningful way? Especially since, as you said so yourself, it's not exactly complex political thought to begin with. It's very high school level politics. It might as well just read bad things are bad and life isn't simple. So by the way, I love this mail because I have a lot of the same feelings, and you touched on kind of some big things. So to get kind of the small things out of the way first. I mean, look, the people who share that Stan soapbox cutout about tolerance and diversity, they don't give a shit about Stan Lee. Many of those exact same people thought Stan Lee was a thief and kind of a misogynist and other things. They're happy to label him that and do on a regular basis. They are sharing that not because they believe even what Stan says, but let's assume for the sake of argument that they do. But that's not why they're sharing it. They're sharing it to own the chuds. That's why they're sharing it. The only reason why they're sharing it. They basically see people going, I liked it when comics were, back in the 80s and 90s, comic books were better. I like that when comic books were not so obsessed with current day politics. And so these people are like, look at this. Here's your idol Stan Lee saying diversity matters. Fuck you. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it to prove a point. They don't actually believe anything in that Stan soapbox. None of it. They're doing it purely to go, hey, you're a hypocritical loser, you fucking incel. How about that? That's why they're doing it. And, what do you have to say about that? Yeah, Stan Lee was a hard... I mean, look, first of all, nobody should imagine that Stan Lee was this great philosopher who was, had these very strong opinions on free speech or diversity or any of these things. Stan Lee was a marketer. And when the comic books were coming out and, the 70s, 80s, particularly the 70s, where people were flirting with social consciousness, this was a way to say, hey, they're true, in a very kind of, like you said, high school level. Hey, they're true believers. Free speech is great. We believe in it. Make mine marble. That was what he was doing. And I don't knock him for that. I mean, that's all it was supposed to be. Stan Lee wasn't writing those soapbox articles and going, this really should be in the Smithsonian. They did, Stan Lee was not trying to collect up all his thoughts in a book and do a tour and run for Congress or any of that stuff. He wasn't doing any of that. He was writing that stuff as marketing. And the marketing was, hey there, folks, superheroes are awesome. We love them, and you should love them too. And let's buy my superhero books, and that's what you should. You should buy my superhero books because they're good for you. That's what he's doing. Okay, again, that's not. I'm not disparaging him. That was literally his job to do that. So good for him. Do people take lessons away from? One more thing you mentioned in your thing that is absolutely 100% true. I have a huge eye roll. It's not a pet peeve, but absolutely, I roll my eyes when people are like, I learned everything that there is to learn about racism from X-Men. Like, that's scary to me. No, you did not. that is straight up bullshit right there. Or you're a very weird individual. Look, that's just nonsense. Okay, particularly if it's somebody older. But do people take life lessons from comics? Yeah, maybe not the obvious ones. I think for kids, comic books are a morality tale, and I'm going to broaden, kind of like the comic industry does. I'm going to broaden the definition of comics to include manga for just a moment. So my kids, as you know, they read some comic books that they really like. My Hero Academia and One Piece. I love them too. I won't deny it. Big reason why I love them is because my kids love them. But one of the things that My Hero Academia does, kind of at that very same, it's why it reminds me very much of 70s, 80s comics, U.S. comics, is there's a morality lesson there. Bad guys are complex. Bad guys are doing things for reasons, and we're going to go into those reasons, but they're still evil and they're still wrong. And good guys fight against unstoppable odds. It's a cliche. In fact, they hit it too much. But when Midoriya is like, I don't care if this destroys my body, I have to stop this villain. That's pretty much one of the 8 things he says. But there's this idea of sacrifice of, I've given these powers for a reason. The entire all for one for all dynamic between the heroes and the villains. It's like these powers are meant to inspire and help people. And we were given this, it's the Spider-Man lesson. With great power comes great responsibility. And my kids watching that are taking a lesson away from that. Now, granted, my kids are, 9 and 12. But they're watching this stuff. One Piece, it's like, hey, friendship matters. Hey, we're in a situation. There's, I have a goal. I want to be king of the pirates and all the rest. But at the same time, there's this. We just stumbled on this island where they're enslaving children. That seems pretty shitty. We should help them. And so there's that feeling of, I have the ability to do something. Let's do the right thing with a clear line of heroes and villains. I do think people take those lessons from comics. And they still do. I think even today, I think those lessons are still coming through for people. That's a good thing. Do adults take lessons from comics? I don't know. I mean, people could take inspiration from anything. I don't think it's nearly as much as Twitter would like you to believe. And I think a lot of these writers are writing these stories like, I wrote this story where there was a hero and they were a little bit ashamed because they're gay. But then they learned that it's okay to be gay, and their oppressors are the real cowards, and they'll have friends who support them. And this was the greatest work of my life. I'm going to inspire an entire generation of people. No, you're not. I'm sorry. That lesson has been communicated, and quite frankly, better in a 30-second YouTube commercial that people see while they're looking at AFNOW or something else. That they're like the people already gotten that lesson. I think some of that kind of stuff, I'm writing this comic to, teach a lesson, I think always falls flat. However, I do think that, particularly kids, children, young adults, reading some of these things, when the comic is written well, there is a definite, this is what responsibility means. This is what, a higher purpose means, all that kind of stuff. I think that does come through in comics, and I think people can learn from it. And I think, I don't think comics are necessarily put here to do that, but I do think that comics are, have that ability. The other kind of less tangible thing or harder thing is a lesson that I suspect the majority of people listening to this, assuming you still read comics, I'm kind of disappointed. I mean, one of the issues I have right now with the current comic book aspect of the culture war is that I feel like a lot of people fighting it, whatever side they're on, don't actually read comics and haven't read comics for a long time. And that I don't know, that kind of sucks. It feels like a proxy war to some extent. But anyway, um, I think for the majority of people listening to this channel, you're a collector. You've collected lots of comics. I think comics have taught you the lesson as well about sticking with things, reading for the long haul, the value of kind of sequential art, what that teaches you and teaches your mind in terms of creativity. I think, as many of you know, and I've always been vague about it, and for a reason, I don't want anybody fucking with it, but, I've done consulting. I've had companies. I've done a lot of different things in addition to being a retailer. A strong business sense goes a long way. I'm not going to claim that comic books taught me kind of business sense, but they did teach me the ability to communicate, and they did. I mean, it's part of my life, how I think creatively, how I work to solve problems. Comic books, as a major influence in my life, from a kid into an adult, have helped. It's definitely helped make me the person I am, and I credit comic books with that. And so I think there's lessons to be gained there. Maybe they're not obvious ones, but there are. I think the shallow stuff, like the everything I learned from civil rights, I learned from Kitty Pryde in that one issue where she used the N-word. Like, oof, no, no, thank you. That's nonsense. I mean, look, the problem that you see on Reddit and Twitter and Facebook is the vast majority of those conversations are shallow as hell. There's no depth, there's no substance. The only purpose for them is to get likes and retweets. That's why people do it. It's not a place where legitimate, actual conversations are meant to be had. And so in that world, we should not have a very high opinion that anything good is going to come of it. But how about you? Did you take any lessons from comics? What kind of lessons do you take from comics? Do you think comics have the right or responsibility to inspire and teach, or just entertain? That's fine too. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.